So today we're going to be discussing whether or not the Indiana Fever are planning or expecting to trade or move on from Damiris Dantas. So Damiris Dantas has not played in multiple games. If you look at her game log, she has been playing less. She's played less minutes every single game on the year. She's played less minutes, and the only game where she was statistically with the the stats show was a positive was the Seattle game, where she also dropped two routine passes for layups from Caitlin Clark. It is one of those things where Damiris Dantas is clearly not good enough, but they blew out the Portland Fire. They destroyed them. They absolutely destroyed Portland. And Damiris Dantas still didn't play. For me, that's a concern. That is a concern if you are, if you're someone who's a big Dantas fan or expects Dantas to be on the Fever for a long time. But the thing is, when it comes to Dantas, it's one of those things where I don't think they're going to cut her, because in this game, or in the first game, the Portland game, they played Shatori Walker-Kimbrough and then immediately cut Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. They immediately cut her. So it's one of those things where they would have, if they were planning on cutting her, they'd be playing her. And by the looks of things, no one has mentioned an injury. She's been practicing the whole time. So my theory is that the Indiana Fever are trying to plan some form of a trade for Damiris Dantas. Planning some form of a trade for Dantas. And I think in general that there are teams that they're going to be wanting Dantas. There is an idea of a stretch big in there. And I think you could scam a team for a stretch big. I really think you can, on a minimum contract. And I think you could scam a team for a third round pick to take Damiris Dantas. There is definitely going to be some team that overthinks it. I'm just trying to think of dumb teams. The Toronto Tempo are pretty dumb. They're pretty dumb. I get it. They're 3 and 4. But they are putting together, they're imagine an old WNBA team that doesn't do anything analytics wise and just wants to put together players. And they just fired a player as well. Maybe the Toronto Tempo are we don't really like Jiskaita. Temi's going to be out for a while. And we don't know what the hell's going on with Izzy Harrison. So are we going to go and trade? Fuck it. If I'm Indiana, the player I'm looking to go and pull in is Maria Conde hasn't been living up to reputation. She's a long wing. She is a long wing. If somehow there's a Maria Conde for Dantas trade, or fuck it, they're not going to give up Jiskaita. I'm just trying to think of teams that they could potentially be looking at, because for me, there's no reason that Dantas is not playing garbage time minutes and out of rotation. There's actually no reason, and there's also no reason why. Grace Van Sluten got off the plane and was in the rotation above Damiris Dantas, because you would think in general that Damiris Dantas is she'd be ahead of the pecking order over someone who got off a plane that morning. And not playing her in any garbage time minutes either means that they don't want to hurt her. They don't want to go and play her. There's no other logic to that other than they're trying to trade her. You've seen it in the NBA where teams don't play players that they're planning on trading. Unless, of course, she is injured and they're not saying anything about it, which wouldn't make much sense either. At the same time, nobody's calling for an investigation over false injury reports of Damiris Dantas. If you guys don't know, when the Fever absolutely should have been fined, but they got warned, the Connecticut Sun did the exact same thing with Brittany Griner and no one gave a shit. They did the exact same thing. It's both the punishment should have been the same for both of them, or the warning should have been a league-wide warning, not just a Fever warning. But yeah, for me, this is an interesting development to see what ends up happening, because look, I know obviously the team likes Damiris Dantas. Obviously, Damiris Dantas seems to be a lovely person, but she's terrible. And she's legitimately terrible. It's one of these things where like Damiris Dantas just doesn't fit. Maisha Hines-Allen fits. Mo Billings, whatever it is, the ideal version of Monique Billings that people think they're getting fits. I don't think that's Monique Billings, but the player that people think Monique Billings is fits. At the same time, like Damiris Dantas is just no way, not as a backup center, not as a backup power forward. But there are teams that play a slower tempo. The Fever are leading the league in pace. Like, there are teams that play slow down ball that could probably do a Damiris Dantas. And I think she's, not that she's like this absolutely, like, she's not this trade asset that teams really want. But I do think she's a trade asset that if another team has a player that they're about to cut, that the Fever could just say, yeah, we'll make the trade. We'll make the trade rather than claim her off waivers. And why is that? Because if the Fever make the trade, she's still on a 2-year deal and her contract is a little bit more flexible, or it's a little more flexible for the other team to trade, because if they're like, okay, if we can get Brazil Damiris Dantas out, which I've no doubt another team might be able to, Indy won't, they have her on a minimum next year. So she is, like, she's not a trade asset. Like, you can cut her tomorrow. She's not a trade asset you have to give up anything to get. But like, you could get a 3rd-round pick for her. You could get a look. Maybe you go to Atlanta and are like, we know you guys want to shoot the ball. You're not really playing Sika Kone, and you're gonna play her even less. We'll take Sika and play Sika as a backup center, because that is still. I'm not gonna say it's as much of a position need now. Grace Van Sloten in there, but like you can never have enough length and athleticism. That is something you can never have enough of. And Damiris Dantas is neither of them. As well as that, she's not been shooting the ball. And actually, in fairness to her, she actually has been shooting the ball well. She has been shooting the ball, but she's just the defense, the catching the ball, the running. Like, Caitlin Clark has 2 turnovers a game from trying to pass the ball to Dantas. Like, other than shooting wide open threes, I don't know how like what she does. She doesn't pass, she doesn't screen, she doesn't play defense. She doesn't even try to run back. She doesn't even run back in defense. She doesn't even play hard. But I still think that there are teams that would be interested in her, and there's no other logic about sitting her out. There's 2 reasons they would sit her out in garbage time. 1, she's injured. 2, they're trying to trade her. And I hope they're not lying about another injury.